Hello, everybody. Firstly, I just want to kind of explain what this is going to be about. The World Cup is hosted in the US this year, and I am a little bit of a soccer football nerd, and I'm American. And so, as per every World Cup, there's going to be a lot of eyes on the sport. There's going to be a lot of extra eyes on the world of soccer, and I want to kind of make these video breakdown kind of things, just talking and giving basic introductions to each of the teams that will be at the World Cup, or in the case of some of these teams, and the teams that I'm going to start with, just because these games are coming first, be in the playoffs to get there. There will be better people, obviously, people that are paid to explain the situation of these teams, but I know that I usually get a lot of questions about what's going on at the World Cup or who these teams kind of are, especially for the smaller nations I mean, even a team like an Austria, Switzerland, but teams like Haiti, Curacao that are going to be there for the first time, Uzbekistan. And this is just kind of a way for me to answer all of those questions in a format where I'm not doing it over and over and over again. And those questions can be answered in a video format and kind of just a little bit of a breakdown. So, speaking of breakdown, before we get to the field themselves, just a quick explanation of the process that it's going to look like to get here and kind of how we got here. So, this is, while hosted in the US and Canada and Mexico, this is the largest World Cup field that there has ever been, with, for the first time, 48 teams making it into the field. Now, 42 of those spots have already been filled, drawn, and placed into groups. Now, that was through a continental qualification process, with each team within their own federation being able to play against each other, put into groups, and the top team in those groups, depending on how the federation works. Africa is a little bit confusing with their rounds. Asia is a little bit confusing with their rounds, but Europe is pretty standard. CONCACAF gets a little confusing. That's going to be North America, North and Central America, and South America is just a bloodbath. But those 42 teams that have made it out through that process are already seeded. Now, that does leave 6 places that are still up for grabs. So those are going to be split into the European playoff and then the rest of the world playoff. With the European spots, there are 16 teams that have qualified for the playoff through one way or another, through the Nations League, which is a European tournament between seeded teams that are very close to each other. If you win, you go up into the next league. There's A through D, I believe. Could go to E, but I'm not 100% sure. So the winner of each of those leagues have made it into the playoff, as well as some of the second place seeded teams within the groups of qualification. And so those 16 teams have been split up into 4 groups of 4. So those 4 groups will now be in a 2-game single elimination tournament to secure those last 4 spots. Now, on the rest of world side, it's a little bit different. There are 2 spots that are available to 6 teams. They are split up into 2 groups with 3 on each side, with the highest FIFA World Ranking of each of the 3 teams being given a first round bye. So those will only be 2 games. Those will be played by non-European teams. So there's going to be teams like Jamaica, teams like DR Congo, who is coming out of Africa, as well as New Zealand coming out of the Asia and Pacific Islands section, as well as a couple of other teams that I will get to when I cover each of those teams a little bit more in depth. But we're going to start in Europe, just because I think that's where the most interesting team lies, and hopefully going through all of these teams and their pathways drum up some interest in each of these teams and give you a reason to care about each of them, because when you are invested in the game, when you are invested in the teams and the players, it makes it a lot easier to care. And I know in the last World Cup cycle, watching and rooting against Brazil was one of my favorite parts of the tournament. Watching the game with a bunch of my American friends, watching the US versus England game, was one of the highlights of the tournament for me. Obviously the final, watching Lionel Messi be able to crown himself as the undisputed GOAT of the sport, as in one of the best World Cup games of all time, has to be the highlight of the tournament. But along the way, there's going to be a lot of interesting stories, and within those 48 plus teams, there's going to be a lot of interesting stories. Now, the first team that I want to cover is probably the most well-renowned team that is not in the group of 42 that has already made the tournament, and that is the former World Cup winner and the 2021 Euro champion, Italy. So you may ask, why should I care about Italy? This is a pretty easy one. There's going to be a large group of American following that have a familial tie to the homeland of Italy, especially in the northeastern part of the country. But this is also a team that is playing with a sense of desperation. Now, Italy is one of those countries that is just kind of attributed with soccer among the major populace in the United States, but this is a team that has kind of become a laughingstock as of late in the world of international soccer, because they're at the risk of missing their third World Cup in a row. This is the third time in a row that the perennial competitors, the perennial challengers for the World Cup, have missed that automatic qualifying window. Now, even with the expanded World Cup, they did not make it into that automatic qualification. Their domestic league, the Serie A, known as one of the top 5 leagues in the world, and kind of undisputed in that fact, they sent Inter Milan, a team that is a competitor for the top of their league consistently, to the Champions League final, which is the European club tournament. Very close to March Madness, I guess, is a comparison that I would give to an American sports fan of this is where all of the teams in Europe will come together and compete against each other for one larger tournament. They became technically the second best team in Europe through that tournament, but when they got to the final, they were embarrassed 5-0 by PSG, Paris Saint-Germain out of France. And it kind of has seemed like every time that Italy has had the eyes on them, as of late, really since that 2021 Euro, and I guess in the qualifying period before it, they haven't been up to scratch. They haven't been able to, I guess, put the nail down, put the finishing touches on things, and actually compose themselves and get to the win that they've needed. And this kind of stretched into this qualifying period where they were undoubtedly, coming into this period, they were undoubtedly the most talented, but they ran into a juggernaut that is Norway right now. And I say a juggernaut because Italy only lost 2 games in the entire qualifying period. Now, their wins coming against Estonia, Moldova, and the Israeli national team may not be the most highly regarded, but Norway, I guess, is also a team that you would pick Italy to win the game against. And on a talent for talent basis, Norway is closing that gap, but Italy is still more talented than them. Now, talent is something that the Italian team has had coming into a lot of the games that they have lost, preventing them from making World Cups in the past, and most famously that loss to North Macedonia in the last cycle is really the greatest humiliation in Italian World Cup history, in Italian national team history. And yeah, but these 2 losses to Norway kind of come as close seconds, as they lost 4-1 to them on the final day that Italy needed to win 9-0 in that game to secure automatic qualification, just because of how the goal difference checked out, and 3-0 in a game in Norway that everyone was kind of predicting that Italy was going to go in there and win. So it is not an Italian team that have lost close competitive games with these teams. It is an Italian team that was consistently outclassed by Norway. Now, Norway also did not lose to Israel, Moldova, and Estonia, so going 8 wins from 8, they deserve to be there, and they have one of the best players in the world in Erling Haaland. So this is a team that it's not embarrassing for Italy to lose to, but it is embarrassing to consistently be outclassed by them. Now, we're back in this place of Italy in the playoff, where the last World Cup cycle they did suffer a loss to North Macedonia, but kind of like North Macedonia, they're again not playing very good major teams in this qualification period. So as I mentioned earlier, it is 4 groups of 4 that will play 2 games, and the winner of those 2 games will play a third, and that the winner of that game will go to the World Cup. So the first game that Italy will play is against Minnow in Northern Ireland, a team that has a couple of top level players, but not at the level of Italy, with one of their more well-renowned players in Justin Devaney playing for my team, and a team that I will definitely cover a little bit more on their own video, because they are kind of an exciting team, and a team that potentially could pull Italy apart, because that is how Norway proceeded to dominate them, to pull them out of their defensive shape, to hit them fast on the counter. Firecracker Antonio Nusa was great for that. Game breaker Martin Odegaard, another one who could pull them apart. But this Italian team is one that when they are defensively set, it's very difficult to score on them. There are some problems though, obviously we'll talk about it a little bit later, but if they do beat Northern Ireland, there's a Wales team who have lost their legend in Gareth Bale to retirement within the cycle. This is the first World Cup cycle that he's not going to be a part of, who will play against a Bosnia and Herzegovina side that's golden age is kind of over. Their golden age is kind of past, which does leave Italy a pretty solid pathway into the World Cup. So this is not a group that you would expect any shocks from, but as we have learned in the previous couple of cycles, really anything is possible with this Italian team. Now, it is not that they lack the individual talent, but there are some criticisms of the Italian league, especially as of late, and it has been that they cannot really consistently develop Italian players, Italian youngsters, to kind of reinforce the national team, to reinvigorate the national team after their golden generation has kind of aged out. But they do still have some top talent and are now coached by an Italian legend and former World Cup winner, Gennaro Gattuso. In goal, and really the star, the shining light of this Italian national team, is Gianluigi Donnarumma, there we go, who is, if not the best goalkeeper in the world, one of the best. He shows out for Manchester City, which is a team that is hoping to challenge for the Champions League every year. He is a former goalkeeper at AC Milan and PSG, actually the PSG team that embarrassed Inter Milan last year. And so he's been playing top flight, competitive, extremely competitive, title challenging football since the age of 16. So this is a guy who took over from Gianluigi Buffon, who is a legend of the Italian game, of the Italian national team, and has kind of made it his own. That's kind of his throne now. The backup goalkeeper, Vicario, just if Buffon were to get injured, is also playing at a top level, though there have been some questions over him recently. It is Donnarumma's spot, and there's really no overtaking them. Like I said, the defense is very solid for that Italian team. 2 names that you're going to become very familiar with watching this team is Bastoni, as well as Calafiore, who turns out for Arsenal. He is, you may have seen online memes of him looking like a Greek god. This is a very Italian looking man, and who has become very dominant and carved out a role in an Italian side. Playing from the left side, he is that line breaker through the possession. He is comfortable playing on the outside, comfortable playing as in a 3-defender setup as that left center back. He is a left-footed, exciting young prospect that has come through the Italian league and now shows out for Arsenal. Bastoni on that Inter Milan team that went to the Champions League final. On the left side, Federico Di Marco, who is also a top player of that Inter Milan side and a crucial cog in that team. And on the right side, they have an aging Davide Zappacosta, but also some other players that could fill in there, some younger players, but that is not really their strength on that right side. It is more on that left side and within those two rocks at center back. Another strength, and really the biggest strength of this team, is their midfield pairing. Sandro Tonali has turned out for Newcastle, who is a trophy-winning side in England, playing at the top flight consistently, probably a coach away from challenging for that top 4 Champions League spot. Sorry, Eddie Howe, but I said what I said. And they will pair him with Nicola Barella, who is another very attacking-focused player from that Inter Milan side. Now, you may have seen a theme here of a lot of the top Italian players that actually play for their national team are Inter Milan players, and they really are the only team that has kind of been averse to that criticism of not developing Italian talent and playing Italian youngsters, as teams like Juventus, teams like AC Milan, teams like even a Napoli, who won the league last year, are kind of void of that top Italian talent. And so Inter Milan will be a theme of a lot of these Italian players that you will see, especially in that starting lineup. But there is a weakness in this Italian team, and that is the ability to score goals. Now, in that Norway match that they had to score 9 to win, they had to go kind of from the off early and often. They needed to score, they needed to attack, and they were pulled apart because of it, because they do not have a top level striker. So kind of the one that they want it to be is Gianluigi Scamacca, Gianluigi Scamacca, sorry, who had a very public, very prominent flop at West Ham in the Premier League, and has now returned a little bit to form back in the Serie A, playing for Atalanta, a top flight team in Italy, an upper mid-table team in Italy. They are a European challenger. And he is sitting right next to Jacques Raspadori, who is another player who actually went to Atletico Madrid in Spain, Vamo Atleti, and had a middling, I would say another failure of a 6-month spell in Spain, and has returned to partner him at Atalanta. But these are two players that are not dominant by any means, either with the Italian national team, with Scamacca having 1 goal in 22 appearances, Raspadori kind of being the more recent goal scorer, coming on, scoring some crucial goals for them in qualifying, but not a top level attacker, and also not a very physically imposing player, playing off Scamacca, who is the more physically imposing player. But their real former star boy, Federico Chiesa, whether due to injury, whether due to manager preference, has almost flamed out a little bit. He is still playing at Liverpool, who is the former champions of England, and a very recognizable team. He is still a key cog in that team, but it is as a reserve. And it is not as a goal-scoring threat. He is not lighting the world on fire as he was in 2021, and I don't think the expectation can be for him to carry this team. He is no longer at that level. Now, another striker that will be in and around the Italian team, I'm not sure that he will make the play-in just because of his play this season, is going to be Moise Kean. He is a former Italian youngster that has also kind of flamed out and stagnated a bit. He's playing currently at Fiorentina, who has really struggled to start the season, but are starting to catch fire as well as Kean. Lorenzo Luca is a youngster playing at Lazio, and he is that physically imposing beast. He is 6'7", which is quite tall. A tall striker in the game of soccer would be between 6'2" and 6'4". So this is a large man, and this Italian team has the talent to put it together, but they just haven't been able to find a way to do so in those big games. So now, with another opportunity for a big game, for a big opportunity, and a home match against Northern Ireland, it might be time for at least one of these guys to catch fire, to catch some sort of form at the top level, at the national team level. But if the Northern Irish, especially the Northern Irish, maybe the Welsh or the Bosnian Herzegovinian national team can catch a goal early against Italy, I don't know if this is a team that specializes in having that confidence to win one back, having that confidence to get two back, to, I guess, consistently score goals at a high level. Obviously, in one of their qualifying game matches against Israel, where their backs were against the wall and they needed to score goals, they found a way to do it. It is in there somewhere, but it's just if they can pull it out in this moment that has really eluded them. The last time that they were at this level, they were embarrassed on a worldwide scope, and so now this is kind of really all about Italy avenging themselves, avenging their past team with that, I guess, those legendary figures now out of the team, Bonucci, Chiellini, if you want to stretch as far back as Pirlo, players of that nature. They are without that level of player at this point. I wouldn't say that other than Donnarumma, there's an Italian player that is maybe on the top of the world, I guess is the best way to put it. Top 25 player in the world outside of Donnarumma, there probably isn't one. And if there is, it is in that midfield with Tonali and Barella. And I guess you could argue that Calafiori might get there one day, but he's not currently at that level, even though he's playing very well in a very, very, very elite Arsenal side. I don't know if I'm fully confident for this team to make a deep run in the World Cup tournament, but there is a very favorable draw for them. So the 42 teams that are already in the tournament have been drawn already, as well as these playoff spots have kind of been figured in, and their group has been decided as host team Canada, as the, I guess you would call them the one seed or the pot A team. And that's because they're host nation, and getting them as a pot A team is extremely lucky for this Italian team and causes a very big opportunity for Italy, if they can make it through that European playoff, to step past them, because the Canadian Federation is a mess currently. They have a hungry coach in Jesse Marsh. They have some talent, Tatum Buchanan, Ishmael Kone. They have Alphonso Davies, obviously, who is now back and fit and playing for Bayern, but it is slowly kind of him becoming fit, and I don't know if he'll be 100% in a month and a half from now, so he's going to be a big question mark coming into, I guess that would be a little bit later, so Davies would assumedly be a little bit more fit. So yeah, going into the end of the season, also former host Qatar is also in that group, who really embarrassed themselves on the world global level last time out, but this is a team that has shown that they can play the game in Asian qualifiers, beating teams like Japan, Saudi Arabia, who has been a consistent team. I mean, they were the only team to beat Argentina at the last World Cup. South Korea, who is very dangerous, has some talent, and other teams, an Australian team that will be at this World Cup in Asian tournaments. And this, I mean, a Qatar team that, if they can get their stuff together, then they might be able to figure it out. But also, obviously, every team at this World Cup, if they can get their stuff together, they can figure it out and make a run and threaten. But that's not a team that I would be worried about. If I was an Italian, you would be expecting to win that game. And then the fourth team in that group would be another European middleweight, Switzerland, who's kind of a little bit past their prime as well. They have an attack of Breel Embolo and Dan Ndoye, who may cause an Italy team some problems in that way of them being spread out and pulled apart by a counter, but an aging defense kind of led by Ricardo Rodriguez, who has been there forever, former Wolfsburg left back, former and probably current captain, actually, if I had to guess, but also a star-studded Emmanuel Akanji, who is a stud playing at Manchester City, sitting right in front of Donnarumma, as well as their goalkeeper Gregor Kobel, who takes over from Swiss legend Jan Sommer, but is the starting goalkeeper of European perennial second place team, Borussia Dortmund. So they have some competitive talent, but not at the level of Italy. I think Italy is comfortably the best team in this group if they can get out. And I think their ceiling is sky high. If you get a good draw in the round of 16, in the qualifying rounds, you don't know what can happen, right? Then you're one kick of a ball, you're one free kick away from making it to the next round of the tournament, and I think that's a place that this Italian team can be. Now, do I think they can beat a France, beat a Spain, beat an Argentina? No, I don't, frankly, but do I think they can beat a team like the Netherlands, a team like potentially hard to beat Colombian team, potentially hard to beat, but a potentially vulnerable Brazilian side? I think that becomes a question. I think they're in those games, and I think they do have the potential to be a knockout team at this World Cup and not embarrass themselves, right? This is not a team that is playing to win the World Cup. Obviously, every team's playing to win the World Cup, but this is a team that's playing for pride. This is a team that is playing out of desperation, and if they can withstand the pressure of another World Cup playoff defeat, then I think then they can make a very, very deep run in this tournament.